My name is Leah. I teach high school math, predominantly Algebra 1. I've been teaching for 6 years. I grew up in a home where both of my parents were teachers, so I saw on a daily basis how much they cared about the students, how hard they worked, and how much an impact they had on those students' lives, and I wanted to be a part of that. I really wanted to make a positive impact on the lives of young people. I joke with my students that I chose math because there's always a right answer.
That's good.
But maybe that is a little bit true, but I really chose math because of the challenges that we're facing today in the world. There's lots of emphasis on engineering and sciences and medicine, and I believe if I can give students a good foundation with math, and they have the opportunity to go into those fields. But even with some students that aren't interested in that, math teaches them the logic and reasoning skills that's going to help them make decisions in their everyday lives. One of the biggest challenges I faced is the barrier that many students put up about mathematics. They come in the room, they say, my parents have never been good at math, I've never been good at math, I'm not going to be good at math, so why do I have to learn this and why is it relevant to me? And that can really affect the attitude of the whole class in general. A lot of students, particularly special education students, have trouble with the fact that algebra can be really abstract. They don't understand where the variables came from or what they represent. So I just think it's my job as a teacher to build rapport with the students by talking to them every day and try to instill a little bit of confidence and make the subject interesting and relevant to them. I've used a variety of strategies to kind of address student attitude towards mathematics. One of the first things that I do at the beginning of every year is I try to structure the class so that the first grading period is a little bit easier for the students. We do a lot of review of topics that they've done in the past. So it's easier for them. Generally their grades are higher than what they're used to getting in their math classes, and what that does is it builds confidence for them and sets the tone for the rest of the class. The next thing that I use, the next strategy that I use, is I use questioning techniques with all of my students. They know from the time that they walk in the door that I can ask them a question at any time. So you get a lot of special ed students that are really shy, so what I've learned to do is as my students are working problems or we're talking about concepts, I look at their body language, and you can tell after teaching a while if they're really understanding something or getting something. So what I'll do if I see a special ed student or a student that has a little bit of trouble with learning, if I see that they're understanding a concept or they're really doing well on a problem, I may ask a question about that problem and call on them. They like to speak out when they know the answer. And you'll hear other students say, wow, hey, good job. So it really builds confidence for those students in what they're doing, which will help them later on in the class. Another technique that I use is I let students work together or help each other. We do a lot of practice problems in class, and I'll put a problem on the board and I'll be walking around and helping other students, and you'll have students that finish quicker than others. So I'll go check the students that have finished work, and then I'll let them, after I've checked to make sure that's right, I'll let them get up and go help their peers. And it's really beneficial to both of those students. The student that needs the help may be more likely to ask their peer a question that maybe they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable asking me. The student that's helping has to verbalize a concept or a process or a step, and that helps them retain that process a little bit better. So it is beneficial to both students. The next strategy that I use is I try to make the class a little bit more interesting through the use of manipulatives or maybe even games. When I say manipulatives, I use algebra tiles from time to time. Algebra tiles can represent variables, and you can manipulate them. It's a hands-on activity that shows them how to solve an algebraic equation. I've used them some with the process of completing the square, which can be hard for students to understand, so we use algebra tiles to do that. I also like to have the students participate in games. One game I use is board races, and students love that. And it kind of surprised me because the students that were really shy, just as I'm up teaching, really their personalities come out as we're doing board races. I may pair them up depending on their learning differences. And it's interesting to see the competitiveness that comes out. They have to work through a problem. They have to show all their steps, and then the group that does all that first gets a point. And the students just seem to love the competition with each other. Another game that I've tried is I've tried to make what I call scavenger hunts, where I put problems up around the room. And students will have to get up out of their desk, go find a problem, work it, and then the answer to that problem will be somewhere else in the room. So it just gets them up and moves them around, and it changes, I guess, the pace of the class, which students seem to like. And it addresses different types of learners as well. The last thing that I try to do is address the relevance of math. I try to end every lesson with a real-world problem. So students can understand, okay, this is maybe how I would use this in real life. I learned to learn with learner difference mainly from hands-on experience, and that includes trial and error. But I was fortunate enough to have a good cooperating teacher when I was student teaching. She really showed me how to use manipulatives in a high school math classroom, which includes the algebra tiles, which I had mentioned before, and things like Play-Doh. I also, my first year of teaching, had a great mentor teacher. She happened to be a science teacher, but we had a lot of the same students. So she could give me advice on how she would reach those particular students that I could try in my classroom. And it could be something as simple as modifying a test to meet some accommodations for a certain student. The biggest thing I can tell you about where you learn the most about learner differences is your fellow teachers. Go talk to them. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because ultimately we all want the same thing, which is success for all.